So with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Mark Elliott Stein, World Beyond War's Technology Director, to introduce today's session.
Hello. I am honored to introduce the final panel discussion of No War 2025. These annual conferences have a special significance to me because I became a part of World Beyond War exactly 8 years ago when I walked into No War 2017. I had no idea of the impact this conference would have on my life, and I hope many of you will find this conference impactful too. I'm especially honored to introduce the moderator of today's panel. I met Tabitha Lean several weeks ago when she was my guest on the World Beyond War podcast. Tabitha is a First Nations prisoner activist, mad survivor, abolitionist, storyteller, disruptor, and troublemaker. And she's going to lead us in a discussion of decolonial futures, Indigenous knowledge as abolitionist praxis. Turning it over to you, Tabitha.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Mark. I really appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here and holding this space with us. As Mark said, my name is Tabitha Lean, and I'm joining you all today from the unceded lands of the Kaurna people on sacred sovereign soils of the country they call Australia. As a First Nations woman, it is protocol for me to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking from stolen lands, lands never ceded, lands that remain under occupation, and I pay my deepest respects to the traditional owners of the country that I stand upon, to the elders, both earthside and in the dreaming, and to all First Nations people joining us today. I also acknowledge the lands, the waters, the skies, and the ancestors of all the places each of us joins from. Across continents, there are stories of resistance and survival, of peoples who have defended their sovereignty, protected their lands, and carried the songs, languages, and knowledges that sustain life. I honour the freedom fighters, the resistors, both named and unnamed, and the communities that have stood and continue to stand against colonial violence in all its forms. And I hold space for the ongoing struggles for justice and self-determination, and for all who are enduring and resisting genocidal violence right now in every corner of the world. And may this gathering that you're all at today be one of truth-telling, solidarity, and deep listening, guided by the oldest continuing cultures on earth and strengthened by our shared struggle for liberation everywhere. I'm really honoured to chair this panel today of incredible speakers, and I feel as though everyone says this when they start a panel discussion, but I think this really is a collection of three wonderful people doing some brilliant work. Each of our speakers today comes from a different place, a different language, a different law, but what connects them is a shared understanding that justice cannot be found in punishment, that true accountability lives in relationship, community, and care. This panel today will bring together global voices to explore how ancestral ways of knowing, being, and doing create liberatory pathways beyond prisons, policing, and punishment. Grounded in sovereignty, kinship, and care, our speakers will share how Indigenous solutions resist colonial violence and nurture futures of justice, dignity, and freedom. By centering story, spirit, and struggle, these conversations will highlight how abolition is not just theory alone, but a living practice deeply rooted in Indigenous knowledges across the world. So I just want to start by taking a moment to say how we've structured this session. I'm going to do a very brief introduction of our speakers, and they will each have around 10 to 12 minutes to share their work, their reflections, and their insights. And then I'll guide a short discussion with the panel, drawing out some of the key themes and connections between their work. And then we'll open the floor for some questions questions from you all. So to start with, I'll do a very brief introduction because I think that people should have the opportunity to introduce themselves in their own way, allowing them to declare their own positionality, because each of us carry our own histories, our communities, and our responsibilities into these spaces. And I want to honour that by giving our speakers the space to situate themselves in their own terms. We're joined today by Lance, a lecturer at AUT Law School, and like myself, Lance is a formerly incarcerated person. Although I like to say once you've been incarcerated, you forever remain tethered to the carceral state. Lance's PhD dissertation examines how tikanga Māori can be meaningfully centred in post-sentence restorative justice processes. And we have Natividad, who is a Mapuche woman and lawyer by profession from the Mapuche community in Chile, and she belongs to the Southern Research and Defence Centre and the North End Educational Space. We also have Connie Fontaine of the Community Holistic Circle Healing at Hollow Water First Nation. The Community Holistic Circle Healing approach is a restorative justice model that was developed as a means of reclaiming and restoring inherent responsibility to one another as Anishinaabe people. As I said, they're very brief introductions because I would love people to have the opportunity to introduce themselves to their work. And now, because you've heard enough from me, I'm going to invite Lance to journey us through his work. Thank you, Lance. I'll send it over to you now.
Thank you, Tūhoe. Okay. Just share my screen. Right. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngau hau e whā, tēnā koutou katoa. To the authorities, the voices, the winds from all four directions, bring greetings to you all. Ko titi raupinga te maunga, ko waipā te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Maniapoto no Tūhoe te iwi, ko te toka ngā nui a noho te marae, ko Ngāti Rora te hapu, ko Lance Ryan tōku ingoa. Kia ora koutou, everybody. I'm of the Ngāti Maniapoto and Tūhoe tribes of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and my name is Lance Ryan. That was my pepeha, my introduction. In the Māori world, and of course in many Indigenous cultures, we introduce ourselves not just by who we are as individuals, but by where we come from, our mountain, our river, our sea, our people. David Swanson opened this conference by challenging the foundational myth of the carceral state, that human beings are inherently violent. My pepeha is the other side of that coin. It's the assertion of our foundation, our Indigenous truth, that we're not inherently violent, but we're inherently relational. Māori identity is relational. It's woven into the fabric of our land, our ancestors, and our community. This is the central ontological conflict that I want to discuss today. The work of prison abolition from an Indigenous perspective is not simply about dismantling prisons. It's about dismantling the worldview that built them in the first place, a worldview of individualism, punishment, and control, and actively reinstating and re-legitimizing an Indigenous worldview grounded in relationship and responsibility. This is where
Sorry, we're hearing Spanish interpretation in the English channel. Okay, please go ahead, Lance.
Thank you. No, right. This is where I grew up. It's the place that makes my heart sing when I go over the mountain range that separates my home in Auckland with where my heart is in Mount Wanganui. The mountain at the end of the isthmus there is, its name is Mawao, and I've spent many long days right at its feet, surfing and working on my Māori tan on the beach. Pretty horrible place to grow up. This conference calls us to explore abolition movements seeking futures free from the violence of prisons, police, militarism, and the borders. These systems thrive on disconnection, on categorizing and isolating individuals, on defining people by deficits or transgressions, detached from their context, their history, and their whenua, or their land. Our Māori way of knowing ourselves offers an immediate counter-narrative. It insists that we are fundamentally interconnected, defined by our relationships to places and to people, both past, present, and future. And it's from this foundation of interconnectedness that Indigenous knowledge systems like tikanga Māori from Aotearoa, New Zealand, offer powerful, living, breathing praxis for abolition. And not just theories about a different world, but tangible ways of being and doing that chart pathways away from punishment and towards healing, balance, and collective well-being. My journey to this understanding has been twofold. It began not in a university, but in a prison cell, and it's now the central focus of my academic work. Like many Māori men in my country, I'm a graduate of the New Zealand prison system. I was prisoner 604-27310 for more than 6 years. I'm still subject to parole, well, for another 4 weeks anyway. Today, I lecture in criminal law at the Auckland University of Technology. I research and teach Indigenous approaches to law and justice. I specialise in criminal law because, well, of course I do. The carceral state is more than concrete walls. It's a colonial praxis. It's a system that severs people from whānau, from their family, from whenua, land, and ultimately from mana, their own inherent dignity. Prison embodies the atomised individual, turning people, as Foucault would say, into calculable subjects of risk. This project of colonial disconnection has been devastatingly effective here. Māori remain among the most incarcerated people on earth. Justice in this system reduces harm to mathematics. A rule broken plus an offender equals time served. It pathologizes the individual while ignoring the historical trauma and systemic inequities rooted in colonization. It is an inhumane mechanism of containment that extinguishes the potential for healing or reconnection. And rather than ending harm, it perpetuates and multiplies it. My way out came not through the system itself, but from a slow process of reconnection with tikanga Māori, reclaiming te reo, my language, learning from kaumatua, our elders, and engaging in restorative practices grounded in our worldview. This meant unlearning the colonial assumption that the state's justice was the only form of justice. Through tikanga, I came to see justice as restoration rather than punishment.
I'm sorry, I'm still hearing Spanish right now in the English channel. Sorry to interrupt. Okay, please go ahead.
Through tikanga, I came to see justice as restoration rather than punishment.
En tikanga, cuando veía esta justicia y cómo se restablecían estos castigos.
Sorry, we're still hearing the Spanish.
I'm changing it, but it's not working.
Okay, I think it's better.
Okay, so restoration of mana, so my dignity, Māori, our life force, and whanaungatanga, the Māori idea of connectedness. So this now anchors my academic work. My doctorate explores how tikanga Māori can be genuinely recentered in post-sentence restorative justice processes, not just as a critique, but as proof of the depth and viability of Indigenous legal orders. So it's about bridging worlds and affirming the legitimacy of Māori knowledge, or what we would call mātauranga, within institutions that once sought to silence it. My journey back to tikanga Māori led me to the focus of this kōrero, this talk, ancestral ways of knowing as liberatory pathways. And in Aotearoa, that pathway is through tikanga Māori. Tikanga is not a cultural garnish to a Pākehā or Western legal system, nor is it a therapeutic add-on. It's Aotearoa's first law, a complete sovereign legal order whose vision of justice cannot coexist with the carceral state. The Western system asks, what rule was broken, who is guilty, and what punishment fits. It individualizes harm and then manages risk. As Andrea Ritchie said earlier in the conference, criminalisation got us here. Criminalisation's keeping us here, and criminalisation is not getting us out of here. Tikanga Māori begins from a different foundation, one that does not criminalise. It asks instead, what harm occurred? How has balance been disrupted? And then what do we need to do to restore balance, what we would call ia? So justice is understood not as a set of rules, but as management of relationships. Tikanga rests on certain key principles. Whanaungatanga, or what we would call kinship or relationship. This is the connective tissue of all life. One of our Supreme Court justices described whanaungatanga as the glue that binds us all together. Harm, when it occurs, ripples throughout the collective. People, land, ancestors, future generations, and so must be repaired collectively. Whānau, hapu, and iwi, our, familial groups, share responsibility for restoration, not punishment. Mana is generally translated as prestige or authority, but it's more accurately understood as an inherent power, dignity, and a personal efficacy that exists in all people and things. And a core objective of the tikanga justice process is to uphold and restore the mana of all parties involved. So the person who caused the harm, the person harmed, and their respective whānau or community. Utu is often mistaken for revenge, the biblical idea of an eye for an eye, but it's really about what do we need to do to restore equilibrium. It might involve an apology, restitution, service to others, undertaking new education, whatever the collective deems necessary to make things right and re-establish that harmony. And lastly, not lastly, but also additionally, mori, or our life force. So the life essence in all beings and the environment. Harm damages the mori. Healing processes like karakia, or we read sometimes incantations or prayer, reconnection with whenua, with our land, and collective dialogue work to renew that mori. So tikanga offers not reform of the current system, but an entirely different logic of justice. So one centered on restoration, relationship, and the return to balance. So if tikanga is a sovereign legal system, and the state's legal system is its ontological opposite, what happens when they're forced to interact? And this is the focus of my PhD research. My central inquiry is, how does a genuine tikanga-led initiative navigate the intense, crushing pressures of the colonial castle state? My case study is on an organisation called He Tātou Panamu, which is a tikanga-led, tikanga-founded charitable trust that works with men post-sentence, so after they've been sentenced through a restorative justice process. And their primary mission is to employ tikanga, or a tikanga practice called Hauhō i te rongo, simply to make peace in order to address the harm caused by criminal offending. We heard on day one about the reformist trap, where Andrea Ritchie argued that reform doesn't work, and Ray then pointed out that reformist reforms like arms control just feed the thing by leading to more funding for so-called modernisation. My research gives this trap its academic name. When the state modernises its nuclear arsenal instead of abolishing it, that's what I would call the politics of recognition. It's a process where the state performs change while entrenching the system. It recognises the problem, but only offers a solution that reinforces its own power. We see this in our work. The state takes our community-led idea of making peace, hoi hoi te rongo, and recognises it only by reducing it to their sterile, bureaucratic tick box system, and then naming it post-sentence restorative justice. And it's the same logic that Rochelle highlighted yesterday, where activists are offered a good outcome, but with political costs. For us, the political cost is that we must frame our sovereign practice in the state's language of offenders and justice sector outcomes and recidivism rates to be seen as legitimate. The second mechanism is what my research calls coercive isomorphism. This is the how. It's the mechanism of co-option. It's how the state uses new public management and contractualism to force Indigenous initiatives to start looking and acting like the state agencies that fund them. We're forced to adopt Pākehā or Western managerialist logics of checklists and risk scores and measurable outputs. These things are antithetical to the relational, time-intensive, and unquantifiable work of tikanga. This isn't unique to Aotearoa. This is a global colonial tactic. We heard Ajira Begum describe how the UK funds Palestinian security services to police their own people in service of the state. The risk of coercive funding is the same for us. It's a tool to get us to manage our own communities in ways that serve the Crown, not our people. My research uses a kaupapa Māori methodology, which is itself an assertion of Indigenous sovereignty, or what we would call tino rangatiratanga, to analyse this struggle, the fight to uphold the authenticity of a tikanga praxis against the pressures of a state that seek to absorb, neutralise and delegitimise it. This conference has called us to envision and build a world beyond interconnected systems of violence. A constant theme from Ray's mutual aid networks to Andrea Ritchie's community interventions to Syed's description of, well, frankly, heroic acts of survival has been that abolition is not just about tearing down structures of war, prisons and policing, but it's about building. It's about constructing the world we desire in its place, a world built on principles of justice, equity, relationship, and healing. My point is that for Indigenous people, this isn't a new build. Our knowledge systems, like tikanga Māori, honed over hundreds, if not thousands of years, hold the keys, the frameworks, and the living examples for undertaking this transformative work. They offer us pathways grounded not in fear and control, but in relationship, responsibility, and the enduring power of restoring balance. So the work is not just building, it's supporting Indigenous sovereignty. So these proven pre-existing systems, like what is happening with He Tātou Panamu here, like the Anishinaabe model Connie's share about, that they're resourced properly, that they're supported properly. This is the living practice of abolition. It's not a theory. It's the hard work of challenging punitive logic, not just with a better argument, but with a better model. A model that builds relational capacity, that holds people accountable within the community they exist within, and then understands that true safety comes from connection, not disconnection. As Bree said at the panel yesterday, abolishing colonialism is the practice of Indigenous sovereignty. And my kōrero today has been a small attempt, although we hear from two people who are doing much more work than I am. But my attempt has been to show you what that praxis might look like on the ground. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, everybody. Greetings to you all, greetings to you all, greetings to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. That was incredible. Thank you for sharing not only your work, but drawing in the connections to what everyone has heard over the past couple of days. I really appreciated that, and the generosity in sharing what you're working on. Amazing. I would now like to invite Natibija to present your work, and just want to remind people about the interpreter's option here to connect up with that so you can hear the full brilliance of Nativija's presentation now. Thank you.
Natividad.
Sí. Bueno, Marimari Pulamien, Marimari Kumpuche,
Speaking in an indigenous language.
Saludarles a todas, a todos.
Hello, everyone. I am talking from the Araucanía region on the south of the world, in a country called Chile. I want to talk to you about from the work that I've been developing, that it's as a result of a political prisoner that has been the consequences of the occupation of the Mapuche territory. That work that they have been working on based on themselves, and that they have used as a backing who are we, knowing that we are in a place that is far away from where you are right now. And I want to tell you that the Mapuche peoples are in Argentina, but also in Chile. And this also has to do with the exchange and the unity between the Mapuche peoples. This is the indigenous peoples, the indigenous Mapuche peoples are before, that exist before colonization. There is 12 originary peoples, and it's one of the peoples that has the biggest majority of occupants, and we are about about 1,600,000, and about 8.8% of the indigenous peoples around the world is the Mapuche peoples. And the Mapuche peoples live in the regions of Chile. That Chile, it's divided in different regions, and we live in Araucanía, which is at the south of the country itself, but also that we have been dispossessed of our lands, and so Mapuche peoples have had to migrate to the bigger cities. This is a reality. This is something happening, and it's important to highlight and who are we and how we see the world itself and life itself, and how we have been working and how we have been writing our storytelling, our stories. And right now we have academics and people that are studying and that are talking about these themes in different environments. And we also want people to understand why our fight for the territory of our space, our environment. I am Mapuche, and I belong to a Mapuche community. And I want to talk about and remind people from one of the poets of our peoples, that is Ilikura Gumachi. And Ilikura Gumachi, and what he writes about, it's the product of the immigration that we have to deal with, in air quotes. And he talks in his poems, he talks about, I go and I come from a territory, in that our people have reminded during centuries fighting, each from their own places that casualty have put them in, and how they see as their daughters and their sons as part of the environment, and what daughters and what sons are not grateful to their mothers that take care of them. In the circle of life, we're present, and only because of them we're the future. It's not possible to forget, and this is something that has marked people profoundly, and the indigenous Mapuche community. and how we continue resisting to the colonial imposition. And this has been a little bit more than 200 years. And our life before that the state came in, we have our own ways of living. We had our own our own state and our own judicial system, our own economic system, and how we can resolve our own conflicts, not necessarily through prison as the state does it. And there's others that actually talk about that from the indigenous perspective, because there is a relation of the territory with the origins of the cosmos, and that relationship are horizontal, and where the life component is central. And that's why it's very important to stay within their communities and to defend their territories as a cultural heritage. And this is also a result of incarceration that a lot of our brothers and sisters have endured, and how they talk about what this means for indigenous peoples, in this case, in the Mapuche communities. And then these others talk about that when we talk about people that are incarcerated and they're indigenous, we have to think about that their characteristics are different from the society and the philosophy as the vision of the Mapuche people, as they are a praxis in the code. It's different from the non-indigenous population. And it's essential in their cosmovision and land. It's extremely important for their survival. There's others that also add that have worked against the carceral state, and the Professor Luis Carcamochante that says, and he also translating the consequences that those people, especially Mapuche communities that have been incarcerated, and they talk about the concept of Mapu, which is a concept that doesn't incarcerate, that doesn't englobe, that talks about the universe, the globe, that talks about the land. And they think about having been incarcerated in their words is to go against the being itself. It's violence that the Mapuche people have been subjected to. And it goes against the own reality of the Wamapu community. And that they have been branded by the state-sanctioned violence. And us as the Mapuche people, especially on the south, and it's a product of us reclaiming the territory 3 years ago, we have been on a constitutional state that this indicates that our liberties have been infringed upon, and it's very necessary, and that this we have been fighting against 56 times, and there is the army that is on our territory with very high costs. And what is happening that a lot of us are being incarcerated started at the end of the 90s, and then torture started in Chile. And then we had to use the Mapuche mobilization in order for us to get our territories back. And we have to see how we organize ourselves and how we defend those that are incarcerated. And we have gathered several arguments in order for us to talk about incarceration, arguments that have to do with the importance of territory for indigenous peoples, of spirituality, especially for the Mapuche people. And we have also talked about what the international organisms are talking about of human rights that are saying about what's happening in Chile.
For example,
the International Penal Court and what they say about it. And we also have talked about what community would think about this, and which is very necessary of the differential focus that we have on how the Chilean state system imposes these laws against us. And we have also talked about the right of equality and non-discrimination, and how we have to preserve our cultural identity and the obligations that the state has for us preserving this culture, and how we can use our own languages, and how a cultural adequate way that we can prevent the violence that has been infringed upon the indigenous peoples. And there is also an increment on the global sense, and how we could say this is happening around the world, how there is 63,000 people, Mapuche people, that are incarcerated around the world. And this is a higher percentage that compared to last year. And there has been 100% increment, or more than 100%. And right now we have about 1,800 people that identify themselves as Mapuche and that they are incarcerated. And then we're thinking about alternatives in order for us to have more spaces of liberty. Chile works with an institution that works. This organization works in order to reinstate people into society after they leave incarceration. And it's very difficult and doesn't actually work with our indigenous communities. And what the answer finally is to what is everything happening and on the global level of incarceration. And so we have thought about different ways on how to deal with this. In Chile, we are part of the 169 Covenant of Indigenous Peoples. And then we talk about the International Declaration of Rights, and all of these organisms that help us to and allow us to defend our territories and defend our lives on their own terms. And we're playing on their terms. So on basis of that, we are also looking for ways on how the people that belong to the Mapuche peoples, that they can go on this incremental sentences that I have been incrementing from 1 to 5 to 50 years of being incarcerated, and we're behind looking for alternatives. And in order for us to not, there is a system of incarceration, a regimen of incarceration, of vigilance, of surveillance, and before and after being incarcerated. And this is something that is semi-open. And the way that it works, there is a center, we have the centers of studies, of job and studies, of work and study. This is an alternative in order for us to find other ways of having freedom, of liberty. And this work and study places, there is a subdivision. And this is a regimen that is closed and semi-open, that what it translates to is that it's a physical space that is semi-open, it's autonomous and independent, where a person can complete their sentence and having relationships and confidence with people around them. And the ones that are closed, that there's a little bit more open, they allow a connection that we cannot say that is the solution, but based on what we're talking about, it allows us for people to be in touch with nature, than which is important for us to Machuca people, and for them to be closer with their community and with their territory. And this is, and it's very complex to take these people from a closed environment to a semi-open environment. In the Mapuche community, it's very, it has to do, it's a very mediatic, it has to do a lot with media. When there is a Mapuche person that acquires a bigger space of liberty, everybody has something to say about it. Everybody in the political realm has something to say that we are the biggest criminals, that we're the biggest delinquents. And in order for them to criminalize the spaces that are semi-open, and we have to fight a lot about it, starting in 1997, and considerably to the last time. We have, there has been, in 2010, we realized that there has been 30 people that are being judged. And right now, there is a considerable amount of increment of 200%. There is an explosive increment into the repression and the answer that the state has given, and how with the Mapuche people have been trying to have the restitution of lands. And it has been a big challenge that we have had to endure, because we don't have another ways for us to have justice. We don't have our own system of justice. It is not recognized by the state, and it only works. There is an only rule, which is the Chilean law system, which is imposed. It's a judicial system that is imposed on us, and is quite contrary to what we as Mapuche people use, as indigenous peoples use. Is not our understanding of justice. So there's a lot of things that have been coming up, and this is the first time that I'm participating in this conference, which I think is very, very relevant to continue talking about this, and to talk about what it actually means, the land, what it means, this incarceration systems that affects us, because we see how they see us as the internal enemy, and how they want to take away our lands, and where they taking the arms from. This has to do with the business itself, and this is very important for us to continue talking about these issues. And I think I'm out of time. I'm very, very thankful for you to have me here. And there is a very short brushstroke of everything that is happening in our Mapuche lands, within our Mapuche peoples. I want to give a big hug to everybody for being here, and to talk again, and those of you that are talking against the state, and where they instill the war in these countries, but they don't suffer the consequences. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that I have contributed a little bit to this big event, and to this very important event, and that are fighting against everything that is happening. We would like to have better news, but the only good news that we have right now is that we continue resisting, and that we will continue resisting. And there's a lot of things that we have to say. We still have a little bit of territory, and we have our languages, our ways of lives, our spirituality is still existent. So we have a future. And I want to thank you, and thank you very much. And I hope this continues being very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natuja. That was that while some of that news was challenging. I think it was interesting for me, being an Aboriginal person on this land in, as they call Australia, to see the similarities, the struggle that the Mapuche experience with the struggles that we have here, and that real connection between incarceration and the theft of land. And thank you for sharing all of that. Really appreciate your contributions today. I want to invite Connie now to share with us your work. And I just also remind people, if you wanted to put any questions in the chat, that we'll hopefully have time to get to later.
Hello, my name is Connie. I'm from Hollow Water First Nation. It's a Anishinaabe community in Territory Treaty Number 5. We're along the east side of Lake Winnipeg. We're a community of fishermen and trappers. I'm not sure where to start. I don't see my presentation, but I'll just go ahead. Anyways, the community holistic circle healing was a process that started in the late 70s, early 90s. We've been working with the restorative justice. Skip that. I'll just say skip when I want you to skip that. Next slide, I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, anyways, next slide. Okay, I'll just leave it on here. This is some of the programs we do with CHCH, and like I said, CHCH stands for Community Holistic Circle Healing. We started in the late 70s, early 80s to combat sexual abuse, family violence, and a whole bunch of criminal activities that the justice system was punishing our people for, by incarcerating them, taking them away from the community, taking children away from families. With CHCH, just let me know if I'm talking too fast for the interpreters, because I usually talk on the fast side. Okay, so with CHCH, we're Indigenous, we're Anishinaabe, we speak Ojibwe, and our model we use encompasses the 4 directions and the 4 aspects. A person's the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental. We look after all those things when we're working with people. And right now in Hollow Water, we have built enough capacity on our reservation. We don't bring anyone in from the outside to deal with our people and our problems unless, you know, there's special circumstances. But our own people are now trained to satisfy the needs of the justice system. And we take a holistic Indigenous approach to everything we do. I don't know how I should start this. Okay. A few people back in the days, there was a groundbreaking case, and there's an National Board of Canada movie, which everyone seems to have watched. And that was one of our groundbreaking cases that led to restorative justice in Canada. It's all across the country now. There's many Indigenous restorative justice programs. There's 9 in Manitoba. And we all deal with petty crimes and whatnot. But I just want to make a point here that when we first started at CHCH, we were taking on sexual abuse, incest, domestic violence, murder. We had those cases. We hosted sentencing circles. We did all that work. But today, no crime is petty, but I don't know what other word to use. We don't get the murders anymore, the sexual abuse of children and all this and that. We don't get those. The court hangs on to those. We're fighting to get that back. Now, when we do our work in Hollow Water, we believe prisons, our people didn't get the help they needed there. Now in Manitoba prisons, they do have Indigenous programs in our prison system for those that actually go to jail and stuff like that. So they do get some of the Indigenous treatments in there. We do outreach work to the people that are in prison. We work with them when they come out. There's post and pre-sentence, all that stuff. One of our major things that we do is circles, and I'm sure the world knows all about circles, sharing circles. That's a big component of CHCH when we work with our people. And I want to touch on that because that is the most important part of our work. I'm going to do a case and example of a case just to get you an idea of what we actually do and what's working for us. We have domestic violence. A man beat up his wife, okay? He's gone through court, and in Canada, and before, this was his first charge, second charge, whatever. They come to us and ask if we're willing to take on this case instead of sending this person to prison. Can you work on this case? And most of the times we say yes. So they send us, and it's called diversion. So in Indigenous justice programs here in Canada, all our clients are coming to us through the courts under diversion. So that's diverting away from jail. But anyways, with this domestic violence case, you have the offender. He gets a worker. The wife gets a worker. The children get a worker. Everyone affected by that one incident is part of the process. It's part of the healing that we do in Hollow Water. And government is really big on stats. So they see the wife, the offender, and the victim. That's what they see. We see the brothers, the sisters, whoever, even the young people that witness these crimes, hear about these crimes in the community. The case explodes. It gets bigger and bigger because any incident in our community triggers someone else's past trauma. So when we do our work, it's very big, very big. So I can have 50 people in one case, okay? And it's really important that we do our work before we bring the people together in the circle. A lot of times people bring everyone into a circle right away. Sometimes it gets volatile. Sometimes there's too much emotion that you have to build those people up to go in the circle to express themselves in a positive way so that what they have to say gets out and people can hear it and nobody gets hurt. Now, we can prevent all that stuff from happening, try our best, but sometimes it's going to happen, right? But the point is you got to do the work before it. And right now in Hollow Water, our self-referrals, we do a lot of prevention to keep our people out of the prisons. We do a lot of prevention work at CHCH. I had a meeting recently with Manitoba Justice and Justice Canada, and they said, Connie, how come your numbers are so low? I said, well, look at my stats. We have 200 or 300 people. We do prevention. Isn't our job to keep our people out of prison? And that's what we're doing. And a lot of the RJ programs in Manitoba, they also work with prevention. We're relearning our traditions and our cultures. And one thing with CHCH too is we do not, we've been colonized for how long, right? What we won't do is we won't be a colonizer. Not everyone in our communities follow Indigenous practices. They still believe in the Catholic Church. They still believe in Protestant Church. They still believe in so many different religions. It's a small world, so it's all open to them right now. So they pick what they want and what they need to make them feel better and live a healthier life. So we work at trying to meet those people at those places. We do not force our culture on them. And that seems to be working with us. And it's a hard thing to swallow sometimes when you're so traditional, but you have to accept other people's ways. But we do that. So you're meeting them halfway. You got to meet them halfway. a lot of our work on the screen here is what we are facing today. Red Path is an addictions program because, okay, we go to court. We're at court every bi-weekly. 80% of the people in that courtroom are Indigenous people. So we're trying to work on getting that court moved from the non-Indigenous community to one of the larger Indigenous communities, because come on, there's 80% of our people standing in front of the judge and whatnot. So we're trying to do that right now, is to bring the courts into the community, and so that the lawyers and everyone else can see what the impact the community has. Because we can go home and we can tell everyone and stuff, but if they're able to go to court and see all that, that's good. We did have court previously with sentencing circles, but like I said before, the government has tied down some of those things and tied our hands, and we don't do that in Hollowater right now. We do not have the sentencing circles, and some communities I think do, which is good, but it's a lot of work. You got to build up to it. So we have court and sentencing in Hollowater. The National Film Board, it was a sexual abuse and incest case. And we had the sentencing circle in our community, which the community participated. So there was like 90 to 100 people that participated in this judge and jury type of thing. And it was very successful. And these parents were allowed to have their children back. Okay. The community was allowed to know what was happening, and it was a small community. So we go to Black Island every year, and at Black Island is where we were before the government saw the silica sand that was so important. They moved us off the island. So the government allows us to go there once a week every year. There's no doors there. So this family was allowed to take their children there, and everyone was able to watch them and make sure, things went smoothly and whatnot. And then people saw that the community wanted to help those that were sick. They didn't want people to go to prison that needed to, what would have happened to the children was one of the big things, because the family was so dysfunctional, and the children would have been lost in the child welfare system. But anyways, I'm getting off topic, sorry. So at Black Island, there's hundreds of people, like I said, moved. People saw the family there. They kept their eyes on them. And those people, that family, became role models and leaders in the community because they didn't go to jail. They stayed in the community. They did the work. They how do you say it? I can't find the word, restitution to the community, and stuff like that. They volunteered and everything. And it's been about 30 years. And we recently had our first Indigenous Justice Conference in April here in Winnipeg. And the children involved in that National Film Board documentary, spoke at our conference, and that was the first time. And they have also become leaders in the community. One works at a women's shelter. Another one is a public safety officer. That was a successful case, restorative justice. And anyways, we have many. I don't know how much time do I have. Someone tell me. Skip this slide then.
Sorry, you've got a little bit longer.
Okay. Now, we do not sit when we counsel someone with restorative justice in our program. We don't sit like a psychiatrist's office or a doctor's office. We don't do that. We use the land. Nopaming is bush. That's my language. It says bush. So we do a whole bunch of cultural, traditional, Indigenous things with the people in our program through restorative justice. And an RCMP officer, we had to do a presentation, asked me, what does that guy get from learning how to tap birch trees? And I didn't know how to explain it, but they're tapping trees, they're doing the work, they're learning a skill. Birch tree tapping, you get medicine, you feed your family. build self-esteem. And while they're learning that and stuff, that stuff starts to come out. Like what happened in their life? Why did they go to jail? Why are they in the court system right now? It seemed that we were able to draw out more of the trauma and stuff that led them to why they're at CHCH by doing all these things, wilderness survival, teepee training, all this and that. And in Hollow Water right now, because we are a cultural based, at least I swear 98% of our population, when we do our ceremonies and we'd have weddings and funerals and stuff like that, our culture is now represented in there. And that's really important. And people like that. They get a good sense of feeling and life, and they want to do better, and they want to work on their stuff. Can you skip to the next slide? Okay, there's where I was talking about the prevention. We do a lot of things in the community to prevent people from going into court. A lot of them are generational trauma survivors, Indian day school, Indian residential school, prisons, everything. There's some sort of trauma in there, and so we try catch it by providing programs, teaching our children that yes, the past was painful, but you need to know it so you could move forward and how you can protect yourself in the future and learn how to fight for our people because our laws are continuously changing and stuff. Next slide. Now, when I talked about circles, that's our most effective way of one-on-one counseling and group counseling with families. And I've identified here some of the circles. There's different circles, sharing circle. You know, it's just, I had a good date last night. Me and my children were playing Monopoly, and then we had pizza, sharing circle. A healing circle, you talk about the pain and the things that have that make you hurt. Offender circles. We usually get an offender in a circle and we talk about, and we usually it's the offender and just the people in the program, the other counselors, I guess you want to call them. The same goes for victims, and then we bring in the families, not with the victim, not with the offender. The families are separate. We bring them in. How do you feel about what happened? What do you want to see happen? Because our work is based on if there's a family of 7 and 5 of them don't want this person in the community, they want them out or whatever, we listen to stuff like. And a confrontation circle is another circle. Another circle is usually, let's say, the offender who was released to our custody went out drinking. And he had a order in place to abstain from alcohol. Boom, put him in a circle. We confront him with the facts, and we confront him with things. You'd have to do it right away. We try to keep them in line. And we tell them stuff that they don't comply. They still have to comply with rules of all the laws and stuff. And we always, when we do intake and get a diversion client or a self-referral client, we always do an intake and we gather, make our case notes. We figure out how to help these people. What do you tell us what you need? You're the one that knows why you do the things you do. If you don't, then we'll work together to figure it out. And this is to keep the people out of the system, like this child and family, and out of the prison system. And it's also, I'm not sure if people still use this, but it's so important to have a debriefing circle. If we have a circle with anyone, the family, the offender, the victim, even the staff, we always do a debriefing circle after the counselor takes their client aside. How do you feel about the circle? You have to make sure they're okay when they walk away. It's all where our staff, we get together and we talk about the circle that we went through and how do we feel, so that when we leave the room and we leave the area, that we're not carrying that. Okay, and next slide. Oh, these are just a bunch of pictures. So anyways, this is our birch tapping. Skip it. That's the birch tapping again, little things like that. There's spruce gum. You make the spruce gum to, with the birch tapping to do the canoes. Beaver tail workshop. We have our clients and people doing that. And you make knife sheaths and all that. And here's one thing we do with our restorative justice and our diversion. We don't want people to criticize and label the people that come to see us. So we mix it up with healthy people. So no one really kind of knows why, okay, that's the child molester group, or that's the wife beater group. We mix it up and we use healthy people in our own community to help healthy people, unhealthy people. So it's not only us, we engage our community to help in the process. Oh, there's this, and then our restorative justice program too. We try incorporate how important it is to stay keep your family healthy and learn stuff like this, because when someone goes to jail, it just all falls apart. Okay, it all falls apart. So these are some of the programs we do. They do the beating, they do the cooking. It makes you wonder, why do that? People speak at these things and they talk and they share, and you don't know, well, actually, they don't know they're healing from it. Go ahead. This is just some of the stuff we do, and then Every Child Matters. And these are a bunch of foster kids in a program. We do have a moss bag program. You know, the thing, they make license plates in jail. Well, the people in our program make stuff for people in the community. They give back. They have to do the restitution. That's a beautiful marten there. That's trapping. We do part of that, and we let them experience ways of life other than what they're doing now. And a lot of them, with colonization, they haven't experienced simple stuff like this that our community grew up doing. So we're reintroducing and have reintroduced this stuff. And there is a fine line, because, you know, they are criminals, so they can have guns and knives and stuff, but it works. And I'm sorry to all the fur-loving people there, but that is our way of life in Hollow Water. And then we do outreach as well. Like I said, you prevent people from going to jail. That's the main thing. And then, yeah, you help them stay out of jail, and then you help them when they come home. So there's 3 different areas that we really work on and try to support people. We had one mother that's soapstone. Oh, it's I think soapstone. The school now uses her. She lost all her children. She stayed out of jail, lost all her children. Now she teaches soapstone carving in the school to our children. Good for her. And a lot of the people, we learn to use holistic medicines. There's an increase in opiate use, drugs. So we're trying to incorporate and teach people how to, since you're feeling down, don't take an antidepressant. Try this. It comes from the earth. It comes from our bush, you know. Go ahead.
Connie, can I give you 2 more minutes?
I'm actually done now. So anyways, this is a part of it. This is bear grease. We didn't kill the bear. He got hit on the road and we harvested him. Mixed with that provides medicine. That's kind of the stuff our people in our program do. I think just keep skipping through that. I think we're oh, that's a video. Skip through it. And that's just our bush. But go ahead, skip through that. Oh, this presentation was for funders. Sorry, that's what we need to do our work. Skip that. Okay, miigwech, I'm done.
Thank you, Connie. I feel like we could have a whole presentation on each of our speakers today, like one.
Muchas gracias a todos por haber estado acá.
I also think, Connie, what I love about your presentation is it shows what can happen when we invest in people, not in systems. I think that's super important. We are getting right to the end of our time. So I think I'd just like to pose one question to our speakers, and if you each just have a couple of minutes each to answer it. So I've got to make this one question matter. So we're gathered here today at this conference across continents, from Utarua to Mapuche territory to the Anishinaabe lands and beyond. And there's such a deep resonance in the way, in all the ways our peoples have been criminalised for defending our sovereignty. So how do you each see the solidarities between the Indigenous struggles across the world? And how can we strengthen those ties in our collective movement for abolition and self-determination? I'll put my question in the chat so you can see it. And I don't know who on the panel might like to go first. But I've just put the question in the chat if that helps. Anyone on our panel want to answer that? Lance, would you feel comfortable addressing that first, perhaps?
Yeah, I think in terms of our solidarities, is we do have this connection with we would say our whenua, with our land, and the disconnection of land has allowed the state to then disconnect us further from our communities and from our support networks, and so I guess that in terms of solidarity, that struggle for land recognition again has been something that I've seen as a bit of a mirror across the Indigenous world. But how do we strengthen our ties in the collective movement? Oh, it's a huge question. I think we need more communication, some transnational discussion groups, and these things are improving as the world of communication improves. But yeah, the some shared platforms that we can sit down and work together more collaboratively. Really, I can't really. It's kind of answered in the question itself. But yeah, it's a collective of the chance to work on how are we reclaiming our land, and I think that's key within the Indigenous collective anyway.
Natividad or Connie, did you have any responses to that question? Connie or Natividad?
Sí, o sea, yo creo que la solidaridad ha sido
Yes, I think that
fundamental
solidarity, it's
para
fundamental
nosotros porque
for
ha
us
permitido visibilizar lo que
because it
hacemos,
allows
los
us
conflictos de diferentes
to
temáticas.
visualize and to see the different conflicts that we have in the job and the work that we have done in our territories,
La solidaridad
and
también
how
como,
tenderness and solidarity,
como se señala que también es la ternura de los pueblos.
how it's
Entonces,
the solidarity and the
completamente relevante para
tenderness
nosotros,
of the peoples
digamos, hacernos
and the
parte
indigenous
también de
peoples,
estos
and
espacios
how we
como
can be,
comunidad,
how can we
porque
become part of
claramente
the
tenemos muchas
spaces of
coincidencias
conversations, and there's a lot of
diferentes
coincidences
alrededor del mundo.
between all of the First Nations and indigenous peoples, and in order for us to strengthen our bonds, it's one of the challenges that we have, because we're literally putting water into the fire. And for me, that's a challenge, because there's a lot of chaos that is happening right now, and it is very important for us independently that for us that languages should not be a problem in itself, but that we could create paths in order for us to create channels of communication, that borders are not an impediment for us, especially here in Latin America, in order for us to talk about the very similar problems that we have across the borders and across nations. And in order for us to see, to be understood and what how this happens in other parts of the world. And I think that's what remains. We are the reservoir of what is left. And question where, well, the products that you consume, where do they come from? That's very important for us to know. That is also solidarity. We don't have to be there, but we can feel what the other person feels. And how we have to have solidarity with Palestinian peoples, which the same objective has been used up against them to take their territories, and how we can bring visibility to all of these issues, because we're fighting for life, we're defending life in all the different latitudes of the world. We're very attached to the territory in itself, and how we have to continue strengthening our force and our connections, and continue participating in things like this, and to bring the indigenous communities so they can also speak up and join with their voices. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nativia. That's, a wonderful response. Connie, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we close off our session? Not sure if Connie has had to step away. Oh. Greta will be super happy because we're...
Are you asking me?
Yes, Connie, did you have anything you wanted to respond with that question?
I don't even know what the question is. I'm trying to look for it.
Sorry, we'll just go back up to the question. Sorry, it was, what solidarity do you see between Indigenous struggles across the world, and how can we strengthen those ties in our collective movement for abolition? So basically, sort of, how can we connect up as Indigenous people around the world to strengthen our ties for, sort of coming together for liberation?
Oh, better networking for sure. And in Hollow Water, we have a community fast that is usually attended by people all across North and South America and Europe, and they come and learn what we do. And since COVID, we haven't had that, but I mean, it would be so interesting to go to other platforms, other areas to learn. For Indigenous communities anyways, like Chile and New Zealand and everywhere else. I think it's important we all have the same type of concept in the foundations. And I do believe that there were people from Chile that attended our community fast, and Peru and Argentina. So we do leave our doors open when people want to come and visit our community and learn. Miigwech.
Amazing, thank you. I think it's really important, that idea of coming together as Indigenous peoples across the world. The work of abolition is international work, and it is about smashing down those borders. So thank you. Look, thank you to everyone for what you shared today. And I just want to offer my respect to the ancestors who continue to guide our struggle for liberation everywhere. And may we leave this space today remembering that abolition is an act of love, that sovereignty is the heartbeat of freedom, and that our collective survival depends on each other. And thanks to everyone for being a part of this conversation. Walk gently, stay fierce, and keep imagining us all free. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Well, I am just blown away listening to all of you. I have learned so much, and I'm going to follow up and learn more. And this is so important, and it's so great to speak to people around the world. So I'd like to thank all the panelists and the hardworking translators as well. And I'm going to turn this over to Greta. Thank you, everybody.